From July 1st, 2013 to June 30th, 2014, Planned Parenthood has received $528.4 million in federal funding. Okay, and 103.6 million of that was supposed to go towards family planning, quote unquote, and that actually includes abortion costs. So that doesn't quite count as family planning now, does it? What are the interests of these billionaires who support Planned Parenthood? Is it to help or conveniently provide a service that just happens to fall into population control? I think that that's pretty evident that they care more about keeping the population down and under control than they do about women planning a family. Okay, so this is an inversion of everything that we would consider the moral, correct posture. And everything is being flipped and it's being inverted to look or appear as if it is something evil, to take away the rights of women, to take away their reproductive rights, which even the term reproductive rights is a completely sensationalized phrase. I mean, this has nothing to do with your reproduction. This has to do with you terminating the life of a human being. This is a human being. From the moment of conception, there's a spark. There's the spirit that enters the body of the child. And what I'm seeing in these far left radical organizations of feminists is that they are calling the anti-abortion rhetoric propaganda, which is very interesting because, first of all, most of these constructs have been created a long time ago. And this goes into transforming a patriarchy into a matriarchy, or sex role inversion. And this is directly connected to Frederick Engels and his book, The Origin of the Family, Private Property and the State. And this book was first published in 1884. And what he did was he popularized the belief that is now accepted among the feminist belief system, that there is deep-rooted discrimination against the oppressed female sex, and that was a function of patriarchy. That belief that matriarchy was the solution to patriarchy, and how that flows from Marx's comments in German ideology. And he advances the idea that wives and children were first property of the patriarchal male. So these social political groups are still playing on the idea that we are victims and that we're disadvantaged, and really giving a false sense of reclaiming what was already ours through this idea that we have responsibility and we have the power to create or to destroy. And that you are announcing your allegiance to your womanhood by being able to create a sacrament of your child, basically to reclaim your womanhood. Yeah, it makes no sense. So you can see this as the goddess paradigm, and that, the woman is powerful and she has the ability to bring life in or to destroy life. I hope that people can see where I'm going with this. These social political groups are playing on your quote-unquote victimhood, your quote-unquote disadvantage, and they're steering these protests to achieve their own goals. They do not care about women, in other words. This is not about women's rights. This is about what they're trying to prepare for their own agendas. And this actually goes straight into Agenda 2030, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But for now, I want to read from an excerpt in Edward Bernays, and this was written in his book, Propaganda. And if we understand the questions and motives of the group mind, it is not possible to control and regiment the masses according to our will without them knowing it. Trotter and Le Bon concluded that the group mind does not think in the strict sense of the word. In place of thoughts are impulses, habits, and emotions. In making up its mind, its first impulse is to usually follow the example of a trusted leader. But when the example of the leader is not at hand, and the herd must think for itself, it does so by means of cliches, pat words, or images, which stand for a whole group of ideas, not experience. So let's look at George Lucas and his idea of revolutionary Marxism. He says, such a worldwide overturning of values cannot take place without the annihilation of the old values and the creation of new ones by the revolutionaries. Let's look at Wilhelm Reich in his book, Mass Psychology of Fascism. He believes that the organized religious mysticism of Christianity was an element of the authoritarian family that led to fascism. He also says the patriarchal power in and outside of man was to be dethroned. A revolutionary sexual politics would mean the complete collapse of the authoritarian ideology, and man was fundamentally a sexual animal. So if you really want to fight the man and you want to fight the status quo and these organized groupthink ideologies of a, one world system and cohesive universality and all that, then really what you're looking for is a heart-to-heart relationship with God. When we look at cinema, we can see that there's this trend of making Christians look like they're moronic and that they don't have a mind of their own. Their morals are oppressive and non-progressive, and put a limitation on your fun and what you can and cannot do. I mean, I can name countless movies, countless teenage movies, countless, movies for adults, TV shows. The Christian character is always the, wet blanket. They're a complete moron. They're not fun. They're just totally uncool. Like they're the biggest dork in the world. And, it's the last thing that you want to be is one of them. This is all by design. And that conditioning goes really deep. I think that it probably impacted the way I felt about God and how I rebelled and how I rebelled against the notion that I was created. In the entire paradigm that we are created, that we actually have a distinct purpose that is individual and also unifying. This is true equality. We are individuals by spirit, but we are unified by spirit. We are unified by God because we all have a intentional design to be here. What is deemed as equal can only be dealt by unconditional love. These politicians do not have unconditional love, I guarantee you. So I want to read to you what I found on a Rise and Resist webpage, and this is one of those Soros-sponsored groups who were recently in Washington, D.C. passing out many constitutions of the U.S. with a sticker Rise and Resist on top. So I went ahead and I followed the webpage, and one of their petitions was against the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, and this would ban late-term abortions and criminalize doctors who perform them. And on the petition, they wrote, banning this medical procedure will endanger lives, strip personal freedoms from women and their doctors, and open the door to far more restrictable measures seeking to control women's bodies. In the very wording of this, it just goes to show very propagandic ways to illustrate a point that is actually false. First, they said banning this medical procedure will endanger lives. Okay, I think that's a stretch to call killing a child in a clinic a medical procedure that will save an endangered life, being the mother, because that was proven to be false, okay? This is one of the things that they like to organize as a way to gain control of their position as pro-choice. So let's look at this lie. Under the Dublin Declaration, which has more than 1,000 signatures from obstetricians, neurologists, pediatricians, and other medical professionals, claiming the fact that abortion is never necessary to save a mother's life. Never, ever necessary. You do not need to kill the child to save the mother. Even an abortion doctor, Anthony Levatino, a former OBGYN who performed over 1,200 abortions, claims the life of the mother argument is nonsense. He states, during my time at Albany Medical Center, I managed hundreds of such cases, and that terminating pregnancies to save mothers' lives, and all of those cases, the number of unborn children I had to deliberately kill was 0. Let's take a closer examination of what the Vice President of Planned Parenthood proposed back in March 11th, 1969. And this is a memorandum to Bernard Berelson, who was the President of Population Council and you can find this in activities relevant to the study of population policy for the U.S. I'm just going to go ahead and read the entire thing. It says, Table 1, examples of proposed measures to reduce U.S. fertility by universality or selectivity of impact. And the 3 lists are as follows: social constraints, economic deterrence, and social controls. So under social constraints, it says restructure family. A, postpone or avoid marriage. B, alter image of ideal family size. Compulsory education of children. Encourage increased homosexuality. Educate for family limitation. Fertility control agents in water supply. Encourage women to work. Okay, next section is marked economic deterrence. Modified tax policies. A, substantial marriage tax. B, child tax. C, tax married more than single. D, remove parents' tax exemption. And an amendment to D, additional taxes on parents with more than 1 or 2 children in school. Reduce/eliminate paid maternity leave or benefits. Reduce/eliminate children's or family allowances. Bonuses for delayed marriage and greater child spacing. Pensions for women of 45 with less than N children. Eliminate welfare payments after the first 2 children. Chronic depression. Require women to work and provide few child care facilities. Limit/eliminate public financed medical care, scholarships, housing loans, and subsidies to families with more than N children. Okay, next section under social controls. Compulsory abortion of out-of-wedlock pregnancies. Compulsory sterilization of all who have 2 children except for a few who would be allowed 3. Confine childbearing to only a limited number of adults. Stock certificate type permits for children. Housing policies. A, discouragement of private home ownership. B, stop awarding public housing based on family size. Payments to encourage sterilization. Payments to encourage contraception. Payments to encourage abortion. Abortion and sterilization on demand. Allow certain contraceptives to be distributed non-medically. Improve contraceptive technology. Make contraception truly available and accessible to all. Improve maternal health care with family planning in a core element. Okay, so what's interesting about parts of these is that Planned Parenthood does not even provide family planning expertise, nor do they have many referral services. You can check countless YouTube videos of people calling Planned Parenthood state to state, and they do not offer any kind of family planning, prenatal care. Those are completely absent in what they offer, and they will say it by their own admission that their main focus and specialty is in abortions. So we can deduce that Planned Parenthood overall has their certain worldview that they are keeping intact, and I would say to destroy the nuclear family. If it's not about Planned Parenthood or unplanned parenthood, then it has nothing to do with parenthood, does it? It has to do with eradication or genocide of children, and promoting this as the responsible thing to do. If you'll notice, this goes hand in hand with the green movement and the increase in the ideology that not having children is promoting a happier planet, and that we are saving valuable resources for the future of mankind, or womankind. And if I really wanted to get into the politically correct way to say it, I might have to specify the 63 new genders that are now to be embedded in this new think worldview. Now let's take a look at some recent feature films that support this sex role inversion by portraying empowered women in the goddess archetype, which again, in my opinion, supports the ideology that a powerful woman can create or destroy life. And if we look at the Wiccan tradition, they believe that the goddess was venerated as life-giving and life-destroying, and is associated with nature and fertility. Just in this past year alone, we have movies with a central female goddess type character such as Wonder Woman, Hunger Games, Atomic Blonde, Rogue One, The Force Awakens, and this is with the intentionality of the symbolic phoenix from the ashes with the rise of the goddess slash matriarch. And let's not forget that these Soros-sponsored protests were all along the same timeline of these movies. Now let's take a look at the original Wonder Woman comic, and it was written by Dr. William Marston, who was a famous psychologist. And he once said that Wonder Woman was a psychological propaganda for the new type of woman who I believe should rule the world. So it's interesting to see this timely insertion of Wonder Woman into this liberal third wave feminist movement. So a lot of people may not know this about Mr. Marston, but he actually lived with a woman who was named Olive Byrne. Her pen name was Olive Richard, and they lived together, and he actually had a wife. And guess who she was? She was the niece of Margaret Sanger. Yes, folks, that's right. The founder of Planned Parenthood herself. Though I really liked Wonder Woman, I thought it was a really well-made movie, apart from any kind of propaganda that was involved. I still enjoyed it. What's interesting for people that haven't seen it is that Wonder Woman is Diana. And as we know, Diana was a goddess of the hunt, the moon, and nature. And she was known as the virgin goddess of childbirth and women. Diana was also to never marry. So I want to look at this book called The Power of the Witch by Laurie Cabot. And she says in Dianic Covens, there is a great emphasis placed on the goddess and the role of the priestess. She goes on to say that covens are matrifocal and center around women's issues. She says that the women's movement has focused and been inspired by much of the same political activism that some covens engage in. Also saying radical feminism, including lesbianism, has found its place in Dianic covens. And to go back to the movie real quick, they have a secret weapon called the God Killer. The God Killer. Not the Goddess Killer, the God Killer. So again, that inversion of the patriarch to the matriarch theme. Okay, I want to go back to an event that happened on August 9th, 2015. And this was seen on the Empire State Building. A lot of people may have seen this, maybe posted on Facebook. I investigated it, and it indeed did happen. The goddess Kali was spotted on the New York Empire State Building, along with animals which were representing Mother Earth and conservation. And the animal that was featured was actually Cecil the lion. So again, we have another reference to the goddess archetype being represented in the form of Kali, and yes, a goddess being a creator or destroyer, much like the earth itself. So this goes straight into the green agenda. If we look at some of the underlying subconscious suggestions of this type of imagery, this type of invocation through cinema, we could easily see that they are kind of saying abortion is important and you're doing something to change the world. You have the power in your hands, right? Not only that, you empower yourself by your choice. Okay, so back to Agenda 2030. So if you go straight to the UN website, Agenda 2030, and you look under the declaration on number 3, it says, we resolve between now and 2030 to end poverty and hunger everywhere, to combat inequalities within and among countries, to build peaceful, just, and inclusive societies, to protect human rights and to promote gender equality and empowerment of women and girls, and to ensure the lasting protection of the planet and its natural resources. Then if you go down to point number 20, it's realizing gender equality in the empowerment of women and girls to make a crucial contribution to progress across all of the goals and targets. And those targets are very much in need of you to believe that we have a global epidemic with global warming, we have overpopulation, we have limited resources. All of these things go along within that ideology that women can be empowered if they were to make the decision to abort their children or to not have children to begin with, or to get married. The truth is, women do have power, and that power is to create and to nurture. And actually, what we end up doing is we end up destroying ourselves when we decide to take part in these kind of cultic initiations. And whether or not you believe in that, I'm giving you evidence to support that these ideals come from occult roots. So by their own admission, women are in a position to either give power to this system that is looking for one world governance and to play right into where they want you, or we can choose to bring life and innocence into the world to actually rekindle and restore life as God has planned, with structure and order. See, in nature, there's structure and order to everything. On the other hand, socially engineered constructs will fail. They were designed to fail. So when we look at these, quote, pro-women march slogans, the general mantra of what's being said, we can deduce that basically they're saying that being pro-choice is pro-woman, and those two terms have become synonymous with being female. Also, the idea that you're taking responsibility and that you've made a conscientious choice to empower yourself by this action, and it's just a normal part of being a woman is making the decision to abort your child's life. I see this being a smeared idea across the board, that this is completely normal and it's just a part of your right, your civil right to be a woman. So let's take a look at what the Media Research Center Business Division analyzed about the groups involved in the Women's March. So 100 of the 544 Women March partners received a total of $246 million plus dollars from George Soros between 2000 and 2014. He gave $100 million to 36 of those partners, including the Center for Reproductive Rights, MoveOn.org, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. His money also goes into groups that are openly hostile to people of faith and their values, including ACLU, and they received $37.3 million. As we know, George Soros is an open supporter of Planned Parenthood, and he is pro-choice, and he gave Planned Parenthood $21.2 million and $1.5 million to cover up the fetal tissue scandal. So open admissions to what the Women's March was actually about had nothing to do with women, but actually it was a pro-abortion march all the way. They actually refused certain activist groups or certain groups that had anything to do with being pro-life. And one of these groups that were removed was the pro-life group New Wave Feminist, and they were on the official event, but were removed later because of the backlash from feminists arguing that pro-life women are not welcome in this feminist movement. And here's the official statement from the Women's March apologizing for the error. It says, "The Women's March platform is pro-choice, and that has been our stance from day one. We want to assure all of our partners as well as participants that we are pro-choice as clearly stated in our unity principles. We look forward to marching on behalf of individuals who share the view that women deserve the right to make their own reproductive decisions. The anti-choice organization in question is not a partner of the Women's March on Washington. We apologize for this error." So you can see this is not about freedom of speech. This is not about freedom of choice. This is about only having the voices of people that think exactly like them, only. But I thought this was a women's march. Doesn't sound like a women's march at all. It only sounds like some women can march. And the other women will be alienated from the predominant voice of the real reason for this march. Fact check, according to order and creation. Okay, reminder, all stages of life in and out of the womb make a human. Killing a child in and out of the womb is homicide. A woman that decides to kill her child is not a hero, a warrior, or more of a woman. It also does not make you a true feminist. If feminism stands for equality of all, but actually excludes the unborn, is not equality. Now I want to get into more of the graphic parts of Planned Parenthood and what they are really doing and how they do profit. They are not a non-profit. They profit off of baby parts, and they've been caught. And there are countless videos out there that will break your heart about exactly what they do to these babies inside the womb and how they procure the actual body parts through dismemberment, and how they try to capture the parts of the baby as intact as possible. The following clip is a testimony of a woman who began working at a Planned Parenthood to collect stem cells from blood. Little did she know what the job really was, but she goes into great detail in this interview.
So I went, she told me to meet at the Concord Clinic around like 6 or 7.
For your first day at STEM Express, you're going to be drawing blood. Come to the Planned Parenthood in Concord, California at like
They didn't say I was going to be drawing blood. They didn't tell me anything.
Oh, they just said
show up.
First day of work, just be
show
there.
up.
Okay.
So I pull in the parking lot. No one's there. And Clarissa pulls up and she takes out we have little STEM Express rolly bags where you put the supplies. So she pulls that out, and there's, one nurse lets us in, and everything seemed normal. It's just like a little medical center. There's the lab, and then they have a little tiny path lab. I see out of the corner of my eye.
And what's a path lab?
Path lab is where they...
It's short for pathology laboratory,
lab,
right?
Where they have... they bring the POC, which is the product of conception, after the abortion procedure is done.
Right.
What they do is they have the jars, or they have the clear pie dishes where they have to make sure that all limbs and the head are within the POC to make sure that the woman doesn't get sick.
Right.
Because it can potentially really harm.
If a body part was left inside the patient after the abortion, and they didn't get all of it out.
So the doctor has to okay it. Clarissa took me, she's like, "Okay, come over here." And so
she hasn't told you anything. She's given you no instructions yet of what's going to happen this day.
I just followed her, and she took me into the path lab, and she starts putting gloves on, and I'm a little bit shocked because I just see a pie dish with all this blood in it. I'm trying to stay calm because I don't know what was going on.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to act weird. It was my first day, and I didn't want to lose a new job, so I just tried to be really relaxed, and she put the gloves on, and she took the instrument, the tweezers, and she starts going and fishing around.
Fishing around in the pie dish.
In the pie dish, and she's trying to show me parts. And I think I was in such a state of shock and trying to relax at the same time. It didn't really feel real.
Yeah.
And she's showing me parts of, this is a leg, this is an arm. And then she says, put some gloves on. So I put the gloves on. She hands me the tweezers. She goes, "Oh, can you show me some of the parts that I just showed you?" I said, "Yeah." And I put the tweezers in, and I put on one of the limbs, and I've never felt this in my life. I felt the pain radiate through my hand. You can feel the death go up through, something was just alive, and I grabbed it, and I felt that. I started to get woozy, and I said, "This is and I stopped, and she's like, "Are you okay?" And next thing I know, I woke up in the recovery room. I had blacked out, and one of the nurses was there, and she's like, "Oh, you're awake now? You okay?" I said, "What happened?" She said, you passed out when you saw the POC, the remains." I said, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed." She said, "Oh, don't worry. Honestly, some of us never get over it."
And here's another testimony, or actually this is a undercover interview, and this person that's speaking is Kate Dyer, CEO of STEM Express, who is an affiliate for Planned Parenthood, and they are discussing shipping whole intact aborted babies in this one. So not even a dismembered one, but the actual fully intact baby.
Yeah, well, I think I was looking on the website a little bit earlier today and just sort of seeing all the different things that you have listed there. I think on the topic, on the fetal tissue side of it, it'd be helpful for us to understand volume-wise. I mean, realistically, if we were to do an agreement with you guys, what do we think you could get? I mean, what do you feel like you could get?
Volume-wise?
Yeah,
okay.
on specifically liver tissue, because that's such an area of demand for us.
Right, so liver and what about intact specimens?
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you had intact cases, which we've done a lot, so we've sometimes shipped those back to our lab in its entirety. Oh, yeah, I mean, if you had intact cases, which we've done a lot, so we've sometimes shipped those back to our lab in its entirety. So that would also be great if you have
The entire case.
Yeah, because it's just, again, the procurement for us, I mean, it could go really sideways depending on the facility.
Yeah.
And then our samples are destroyed, and we're like, really? This was all so much work, and then just to have them be destroyed is awful. I mean, we have, researchers wait forever, and they want certain things perfectly done. So, we started bringing them back even to try to manage it from, procurement expert standpoint.
Number 42 U.S. Code 289G2A, purchase of tissue. It shall be unlawful for any person to knowingly acquire, receive, or otherwise transfer any human fetal tissue for valuable consideration. On February 6, 2015, investigators posing as a fetal tissue procurement company met with the president of the Planned Parenthood Medical Directors Council, Dr. Mary Gatter. Dr. Gatter was medical director at Planned Parenthood Los Angeles until 2014 and now oversees their Pasadena affiliate, in addition to her leadership and advisory positions at the national level of Planned Parenthood.
What would you expect for intact tissue? What sort of compensation? What sort of...
Well, why don't you start by telling me what you used to pay?
Okay. I don't think so. I would like to know what would make you happy. What would work for you?
Well, in negotiations, the person who throws out the figure first is at a loss, right? So.
No, I don't look at it that way. I know you want to play that game. I get it, but I want
low ball because I'm used to low things from.
You know what? If you lowball, I'll act pleasantly surprised, and you'll know it's a lowball.
Okay.
What I want to know is what would work for you. Don't lowball it.
Okay.
Tell me what you really.
$75 a specimen.
Oh, that's way too low. That's way too low. I want to keep you happy.
I've been at places that did 50 too. But see, we're not in it for the money. Well, why don't you start by telling me what you used to pay?
Oh, no, I want
lowball $75 a specimen, and we don't want to be in the position of being accused of selling tissue and stuff like that. On the other hand, there are costs associated with the use of our space and all that kind of stuff. So what would you think about?
Right. So way higher than that. So I'd like to start at around 100.
Okay. Now this is for tissue that you actually take, not just the tissue that person volunteers and you can't find anything.
Exactly.
Now this is for tissue that you actually take, not just the tissue that person volunteers and you can't find anything.
Exactly. What we can use, what is intact. So that's why I'm saying no, don't lowball. I want you to be happy.
It's complicated by the fact that our volume is so low too. I mean, hey, are you looking at 8 and 9 week specimens or only second trimester specimens?
10 to 12 week, end of the first trimester. If those are pretty intact specimens, then that's something we can work with.
So that's an interesting concept. Let me explain to you a little bit of a problem, which may not be a big problem. If our usual technique is suction at 10 to 12 weeks, and we switch to using an iPass or something with less suction in order to increase the odds that will come out as an intact specimen, then we're kind of violating the protocol that says to the patient, we're not doing anything different in our care of you. And to me, that's a kind of a specious little argument. I wouldn't object to asking Ian, who's our surgeon that does the cases, to use an iPass at that gestational age in order to increase the odds that he was going to get an intact specimen. But I do need to throw it out there as a concern because the patient is signing to something and we're signing something saying we're not changing anything in the way we're managing you just because we agreed to give tissue. I've heard of that before.
Right, yeah, no, it's definitely
It's touchy.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think they're both totally appropriate techniques. There's no pain involved. I don't think the patients would care one iota. So I'm not making a fuss about that.
Okay.
Now you have my email address, right? Write me a 3 or 4 paragraph proposal, which I will then take to Laurel and others in our organization to see if we want to pursue this. And then if we want to pursue this mutually, I'll mention this to Ian in terms of how he feels about it.
As evidenced in these undercover videos, the bottom line is that this is a dirty business and covert operation to sell both baby parts and intact babies for substantial profit. This pushes beyond corruption and into barbaric practices without any regard to the baby's pain. If we can't agree on the ethical dilemmas imposed by the pro-choice stance, I hope we can at least see clearly on what this most prominent abortion clinic in this country is really after. As women and mothers, it is our responsibility to protect the innocent. There is nobody more innocent than an unborn child, who are the future generations to come. As co-creators, we have been handed this gift to protect, comfort, and provide nourishment through encouragement, creativity, and love. I would like to thank everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of SonRise Radio.